Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga was a massive hit during the GBA days, selling over 2 million copies and receiving universal acclaim throughout. And so because of this, a sequel was definitely inbound, releasing only about 2 years after the fact, on Nintendo's newest console at the time, the Nintendo DS. Now with the first game, the main idea is having the two brothers being controlled by the two face buttons. But since the Nintendo DS had 4 face buttons this time, they decided to fully utilize it by Mario and Luigi teaming up with, well, Mario and Luigi. And so for this game, the brothers are going to be teaming up with their baby counterparts for one big adventure. Plus, it fits very naturally because this was around the time when the baby brothers were becoming reoccurring characters in the spin-off games like Mario Kart, Tennis, and such. And so when E3 rolled in 2005 while Nintendo was unveiling the Nintendo Wii, Nintendo then just casually announced the game during a scissor wheel with a placeholder of Mario & Luigi 2. Which, fun fact for those who don't know, in Japan most of the Mario & Luigi games are numbered entries up until Paper Jam, where that and Brothership just have subtitles. But eventually, once the game finally released in 2005, it was fully given the name Mario & Luigi Partners in Time, or Partners in Crime according to the manual. Huh. But as for my personal history with this game, I mentioned in my last video I was able to get this game along with Superstar Saga a few years ago. But how I was able to discover this game was a bit more interesting, as when I was back in elementary school, I think, I was visiting one of my aunt's neighbors. And they allowed me to try out a game on their Nintendo DS, and that was how I was able to discover that Mario & Luigi game. And of course, as I mentioned a few years later, I was able to get it for myself. Now when it comes to the reception of this game, I always saw this as one of the more least popular Mario RPG games. Not because it's bad or anything, but it's more so not a lot of people talk about it that much these days. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, is pretty much a common thing for a lot of DS games. This console had so many great games under its library, but besides something like Pokemon and New Super Mario Bros., you don't really see people talk about a lot of these games these days. So I'm very curious on how well Partners in Time holds up. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins in the distant past of the Mushroom Kingdom, with baby Mario and baby Luigi arriving at the castle for a playdate with Peach, where suddenly baby Bowser appears and trying to kidnap her. Even as a little toddler, Bowser had an unhealthy obsession with Peach. But it didn't take very long for baby Mario to knock some sense out of baby Bowser, but then suddenly the unexpected happens when up in the sky, a herd of flying saucers attack the kingdom, with the group escaping through Bowser's Koopa Cruise. Meanwhile, jumping all the way up to present day, Professor Egghead unveils his latest invention, which is a time machine that is powered by this magical artifact called the Cobalt Star. And so, Princess Peach alongside with other Toads decide to take a small trip with the time machine for a blast to the past. Much to Toadsworth's dismay because he's extremely worried about Peach going on this trip, to the point where he just straight up passed out. But after Mario was able to recover him with a special mushroom, the time machine then returns back to the present day, but in a really broken state. Where instead of Peach being inside of it, it is this monster that Mario is able to take him out no problem. But despite that, Peach is still missing, with the only clue of her whereabouts is being outside in the garden. As the time machine, I guess as a side effect, created a small little time hole that could show where Peach landed. With the brothers testing that idea immediately when Luigi accidentally falls into the thing with Mario falling after, where they were able to travel through time and space into the past of the Mushroom Kingdom and landed in the outskirts of Holly Jolly Village. With Egghead throwing one more thing for the Mario Brothers, which is this sentient suitcase called Stuffwell, who is pretty much your guide throughout the adventure. And they are definitely going to need the help they could get, because it turns out that Peach's destination landed during the worst timing imaginable, as the entire kingdom is under attack by an alien invasion. As the moment the Mario Brothers arrive at the nearby village, all of the Toads are being abducted by aliens. The brothers tried to intervene but got their asses blasted by a nearby explosion, knocking them out unconscious. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Bowser is taking everyone to his castle as shelter from the alien invasion, but while they were flying above the Holiday Village, they decided to make a quick pit stop where the babies were able to rescue the brothers. But after they went back into their destination, they immediately got shot down by a missile by the leader of the Shroobs. And after a small little scuffle, the Mario Brothers were able to meet up with their baby counterparts, where they decided for the time being to team up with each other to stop this alien invasion. And after traveling throughout of Bowser's castle, they were able to meet up with the younger Toadsworth and Peach, where they find another time hole to send them back to present day. And after they reunited with Professor Egad, they explained to him about the situation that they're having with the past. With the only thing that they could have in handy is a small little artifact, which turns out to be the piece of the Cobalt Star that powered up the time machine. And whatever power this thing has seems to make the alien creatures a bit more aggressive. So Egad theorized maybe assembling them all together is probably the key to stopping the shroom invasion. And so it's up to the brothers and babies to go across the Mushroom Kingdom Pass to assemble up the stars to see if they can defeat the shrooms. Now after this point, once you head back to the present for the very first time, this is when the plot becomes a bit more segmented for the first few hours, due to the next two sections being mostly focusing on trying to get the MacGuffins. And along the way, try to stop the shroom's operation as much as you can. Like during the second area, for example, as you're exploring through the forest trying to destroy this factory that's draining the lives of these toads, which are being used to power up the aliens' flying saucers. And of course, since this is about Baby Mario, you get to explore the various areas of Yoshi's Island, where the main conflict in this area is that the shrooms brought in an alien equivalent Yoshi called Yube that devoured the entirety of the Yoshis. And due to all of this, people really consider this game as one of the more darker Mario games in the series because of the big alien threat. And while I do agree that there are several dark moments in this game because of what the aliens are doing, but as a whole, I do feel like this game is more comedic than overly dark. In a way, it's kind of like something like Sonic Adventure, for example, where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of dark moments, but as a whole, it's a lot more lighthearted. With the shrooms themselves being an interesting antagonist, although as for original characters, besides the aliens, there really aren't that much this time compared to Superstar Saga. Stuffwell could have been an interesting character, but he doesn't really have that much of personality other than he's a robot that tells you the way. Kylie Koopa is honestly one of the more interesting original characters in this game, since she's a journalist and she's looking for the big scoop for this alien invasion, who unfortunately gets caught up with a big scuffle against the aliens in multiple ways. No! But she does help Mario and Luigi along the way in certain areas. And other than that, yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to original characters in this game. There are these two toads that came along with Princess Peach, but they were pretty much gone in an instant. This game more so focuses on how much the aliens are affecting the Mushroom Kingdom. So like something like Toad Town, for example, which is usually a bustling place full of toads, is fully abandoned and filled with these alien invaders. And another thing too is that I feel like out of all the Mario and Luigi games, this game really focuses on the main party members, with the brothers and babies pretty much bouncing around on what's happening around them. Which does lead to some wholesome moments, like during a dire situation, Luigi decides to cheer the baby brothers up by giving them Yoshi cookies. Or when they meet each other up for the very first time in Bowser's Castle, the first thing the Mario Brothers does is make these funny faces to entertain the babies! And as for other characters in this game, I do feel like the big highlight of this game is definitely Toadsworth, who while being paranoid of Peach being taken, he decides to take his mind off by taking care of baby Peach with his younger counterpart. Which does lead to a lot of funny moments as well, like when they meet each other for the first time, Toadsworth just straight up chases around his past counterpart like a total psychopath, thinking that the time machine shrunk Peach and he was kidnapping her. And later on in the game, while they tried to entertain the young princess, they tried to do this small little rolling trick, but inadvertently flattened the kid. And my god, considering the fact of what happened earlier in the game and now this poor Toad's probably gonna die from a heart attack one day. Especially the fact that Bowser's just never gonna stop kidnapping Peach. But yeah, even though I don't feel like this game is as dark as people say it is, I do have to say is that this is still a really funny game. In fact, I think it's probably funnier than Superstar Saga, because I felt like the jokes in this game were a lot stronger, especially with Luigi, who plays off the babies really well in this story. Alrighty, so jumping all the way to gameplay for Partners in Time. It's pretty much the same as the last game as you run across different areas and use your abilities to solve certain puzzles. But there are a few key differences between the two games. For one, this time you're not only playing as Mario and Luigi, but also there are baby versions who pretty much plays exactly the same as the brothers, with each of them being controlled by their respected face button. Although to make things very convenient, you're able to travel as one big group with the brothers piggybacking the babies, with the only times where you actually need to separate them is so you can use the babies' more unique abilities. Like for example, the adult brothers are able to throw the babies into higher places, to travel through across secret passages or going through these different wells. And also, each of the groups have their unique bro moves to set themselves apart. Like how the brothers can do the returning spin jump to go across large gaps. Or they can do the simple roll move that allows them to go very fast for certain puzzles that requires you to race through the clock. With the only cons with the brothers is that they don't wield hammers, which is only exclusive to the babies. With the only bro move these two can do is drill, which is basically the dunk hammer from the last game, which allows you to crawl on the ground through these small little grate areas, which is basically finding more secret passages. And for the final movesets, well, the brothers can actually interact with the babies with their bro moves. Like when you do a spin jump near them, they'll float in the air for a sec and you can glide around through different gaps. Or you can use the roll move to turn them into pancakes so they can crease through certain areas. You can pretty much see a pattern with the baby's abilities. And another thing you can notice is that they really love to use the dual screen format of this game. As for most of the game, it's mostly played on the bottom screen, but for a lot of times, you're going to be using the top screen as well for the secret passages for the babies. That has special things like minigames that you can go through, which is very harmless for the most part as you can explore these areas to get special goodies. As when it comes to actual exploration in this game, this is where it's mostly at. Because Partners in Time is fairly a bit more linear compared to Superstar Saga. Now while that game was linear as well for the most part, for the second half of the game it does open up a lot where you can explore the Beeping Kingdom as you liked. Especially after the fact when you unlock a special ability to go through areas you couldn't go through before. But with Partners in Crime, that's not really as common. With the only incentive to going back is just collecting these various beans. Oh yes, beans are back, although even though that they are everywhere in this game once more, they don't really do anything interesting for this game in particular, since in the last game you're able to make coffee that allows you to boost your stats. But in this game, they're basically currency so you can buy rare equipment. Although I've got to say, I really love how this area pretty much teases Fawful's return for the next game. As he states with the baby brothers, he's planning a special revenge for the Mario brothers. But going back to level design in this game, as another thing about this game, you essentially have one big hub world in this game this time, with Peach's Castle, with all the areas of the game being interconnected thanks to these time holes. Now while it's not very as big or interconnected like the Beeping Kingdom, I will say despite it being very small, it does feel a lot more compact. Plus, since you're in the present day, meaning that there's no actual threat, it does have a sense of safeness as well, where you can do a couple things like finding special items, or going through the various shops. But going back to the areas you're exploring in the past, even though that they are linear, I will say that they are still very well designed for the most part, and each of them does something very unique. Alrighty, now this wouldn't be a Mario & Luigi game without its trademark battle system, and I'm happy to say it is about as good as it was back in Superstar Saga, with a lot of enemies dealing a lot of interesting attacks for you to dodge through, with Partners in Time adding a few new things to make the battle system all fresh. For one, the bro attacks this time had a complete overhaul, where instead of Mario and Luigi attacking the enemies head-on, you're this time going to be using a special item to attack them, which can be various things like using a special shell to attack the enemies by bouncing each other with the shell, using the trampoline to stomp onto enemies multiple times, or shoot them with a parade of fire or ice attacks. Which, fun fact, this is technically the game that debuted the Ice Flower, which is a move I honestly prefer over the Fire Flower because it allows you to lower certain stats against the enemies. And what I think is very nifty is that for certain bro attacks, they actually add something if you have both the brothers and the babies together. Like for the aforementioned flower moves, if you have the babies on you, you're able to attack enemies that are flying in the air. I think my only criticism with the bro attacks this time around is that unlike other Mario & Luigi games where they have a special stamina meter called the bro points, in Partners in Time the bro attacks became a lot more resource based. So instead of being limited by meter, you're pretty much limited of how many times you can use a certain bro attack. Although finding the actual items is very easy because they really do hand these out to you. Which does lead to the similar issue of Superstar Saga, where you're able to abuse the bro attacks when you're doing simple enemies. But with Superstar's case, even though it does have bro points, most of the attacks only ask you to give in about 3 of them, meaning at the near end where you're fully leveled up, you'll have so many bro points to the point you just don't have to worry if you're low on stamina. Although I do have to say is that between the two games, I think I would give the edge to Partners in Time because I feel like with some of the enemies, and especially the bosses, they are a bit more challenging. Due to the fact that they just literally hand you these items, they do work around with the bosses because they have way more health this time compared to Superstar Saga. And the attacks these enemies do deal way more damage than the previous game, even when I was focusing on raising my defense. So it's really best to keep your toes up when you're trying to deal with these boss fights. Now, jumping back into the story, after the Mario Brothers infiltrated the Koopaceum in the Gritzy Desert, they finally found Peach before she was swallowed by Petey Piranha. And so after going all the way down to the caves and defeating the plant, they finally were able to reunite with Princess Peach, who for some reason has an alien mushroom stuck on her face. And so after bringing Peach back into present day, everyone tries to discuss on what to do with Peach due to her condition. But moments later, troublesome occurs at the castle when Bowser appears trying to kidnap Peach. The mushroom on Peach's face decides to shoot a projectile at Bowser, and I do not know why. He then eats it, which causes him to breathe this purple fog. And so with Mario and Luigi distracted, he then runs off before falling into a time hole and going back in time, with the brothers and babies going after him. And while they meet up with a younger Professor Egad and inadvertently cause a small time paradox, Bowser, deep inside the volcano, meets with his past self for the very first time, and after a few minutes of bickering, they both decide to team up to defeat the Mario Brothers. Obviously it didn't go well for them, but then suddenly the volcano erupts once more, sending both Bowsers up in the sky, with the adult Bowser falling off the block and landing straight back into the time hole. And for baby Bowser, he then lands right on top of a UFO, where the thing then decides to take Peach back up to the mothership, with Mario and Luigi following after. But it turns out it might have been a good thing for Bowser to kidnap Peach, because it turns out that it was really Princess Shroob in disguise. All hope seems lost for the Mario Brothers until Kylie Koopa returns, helping them escape from the Shroobs. She also has a special key that might be the thing to stop the evil aliens. But unfortunately it turned out to be a red herring, as once they try to unlock something, they then fall off the ship via a trapdoor, which eventually leads them to Star Hill, where they get to summon the Star Spirit of the Cobalt Star, who explains to them that they need to assemble all the pieces together to defeat the Shroobs, with baby Luigi seeming to be very uneased by the entity. And by the end, the spirit then sends them to the final locations of the remaining Cobalt Stars, which is honestly probably the prettiest area in the game by far. Which leads me to the presentation real quick before we talk about the final points of this game. So with the visuals of the original Mario & Luigi game on GBA, it looked really good at the time with a lot of expressive animations and really well sprite forms. And Partners Through Time pretty much carries that tradition, with all the characters from the last game getting a really nice facelift throughout. Especially for someone like Bowser, who always looked a bit off in the GBA version, but he looks way better in Partners in Time. And this even applies to the new characters introduced in this game, like the Shoops for example. And the music in this game is very top-notch. It is a nice and effective evolution of the original GBA soundtrack, while standing on its own to set itself apart from the other Mario and Luigi games. Especially during the darker moments like in Holly Jolly Village, because my god, that is probably the most depressing holiday music I've heard. Same with Toad Town, because it really gives you a sense of everything's destroyed because of the aliens. And once we head all the way up to the Star Shrine, it really does have a good sense of magical and whimsiness to it. Especially when Luigi was able to prove himself worthy by this jackass of a Stargate, who pretty much bullies Luigi and saying he'll be alone forever. But anyway, so after going really deep into the Star Shrine, they were able to reunite with Toadboard, who has the final star piece. But after he found out that the Mario Brothers has the rest of the Cobalt Star pieces, he then ran away with fear with Kylie Koopa chasing after them before getting attacked by an alien creature. The Toad knows something about the star that the Mario Brothers doesn't, with the only clue that they have by him before he turns into a mushroom is this drawing that he made a few hours ago that you had to scratch dirt off. And I'm not kidding, this is literally the only time you use the touchscreen in this game. Yeah, the Nintendo DS, which is well known for the touchscreen, you don't really use it that much. Which, now that I think about it, considering the fact this is a very early DS game, that's probably for the best, because they could have made this game a lot worse if they had, like, tacky touchscreen mechanics. But anyway, so with all the main 5 shards assembled, that means they can finally access to Peach's castle in the past. And I really love this final part of the game. For the past 10 hours of playing through this game, Peach's castle was usually the safest part of the game. But when you travel all the way to the past, it is the most corrupted area of the entire Mushroom Kingdom. with all the halls that used to be filled with friendly toads are now filled with endless and the most powerful guards in the game. As you slowly try to climb up all the way up to the castle areas, you even go up against a bunch of UFOs in this area by doing this small little minigame where you get to pilot the UFO and take them all out. And then finally, once you climb all the way up to the castle, you finally meet up with the actual Princess Peach. However, you're not done taking down the Shroobs, as the princess decided to take down the entire castle of her mothership. And so after a small boss fight up in the sky by taking down the entirety of the mothership, there is no more hiding for Princess Shroob. And so it's time for the brothers and babies to face her once and for all. And my god, this boss fight is pretty damn challenging. So it's best to try and stock up with items as much as you can. Especially since after you defeat this boss fight, you are far from being done. As after you're done taking down Princess Shroob, the Mario Brothers seems to save the day once again, with Princess Peach even has the final piece for the Cobalt Star. But Peach refuses them to assemble the final part of the star. And this is when Baby Bowser returns trying to steal the Cobalt Star, where he was able to assemble the pieces himself. This is when the Cobalt Star begins to activate and immediately turns Baby Bowser into a purple mushroom. And this is when the biggest twist comes into play, or at least you want to call it that. This is where it turns out that there was an older Princess Shroob this entire time as the older sister. As once Princess Peach and the Toads arrived back in the past, they were immediately ambushed by the elder princess, and out of quick thinking, Peach then uses the Cobalt Star to seal her way inside of it. So this entire time when you were trying to assemble all the Cobalt Star pieces together, you were essentially slowly freeing the Elder Shroob from her prison. And now with the final piece in place, the Elder Shroob is freed, who is ready to send in the full-scale invasion once more, and sends everyone flying all the way up into the sky, where the final battle ensues. And man, this boss fight is one hell of a final battle. Like, I'm not kidding, the differences between this one and the last boss fight was night and day for me, with the first phase being mostly easy as you try to dodge the UFOs, and Peach even tries to help you by giving you special helps or trying to give you an item that can defeat the ships. It's not until the second phase where it becomes very serious, as she turns into this giant beast, with the only thing she really cares about is trying to kill the Mario Brothers. And my god, the music in this final battle is something else. Out of all the Mario RPG final boss music, this one definitely feels the most somber out of them all, like you're ready to take this beast out of its misery. Especially considering that this was a really damn long boss fight. I probably should have leveled up a bit more because this one final boss took me 1 hour to beat. But I've got to say, it was very satisfying to get that final blow on Princess Shroob. And when everything is said and done, the Shroobs are finally defeated. And after a little playtime accident with baby Luigi, it turns out that the cure for the affected Toads turned into mushrooms is really baby tears. And thanks to this knowledge, Professor Eguy was able to make a special chemical to make up for the baby tears, and it was able to spread it all around the Mushroom Kingdom past. And so all the people that were affected by the aliens went back to normal. And so peace has been finally restored back in the Mushroom Kingdom, with the only thing left to concern about is what to do with Bowser. After what happened back in the mountain area where he falls back into the time hole, he was pretty much unconscious this entire time at Peach's castle. And while everyone ponders, the mysterious mushroom that baby Luigi picked up after defeating the Elder Shroom begins to move suddenly and goes near Bowser. And I guess Bowser learned nothing the last time he ate a mysterious mushroom, begins to eat another mysterious mushroom, which is when he wakes up all powerful, where now he turns into Shrouzer. And do you know that really cool final boss we did earlier? That turns out to be the pre-ultimate boss fight, as this is the real final boss apparently. Although interestingly though, for this boss fight, you don't attack Bowser at all. Instead, you're required to do counterattacks instead. Honestly, on its own, the boss fight is still pretty fun, but man, I just found it funny how we went from this to this. But that being said, after you defeat Bowser once again, everything can finally go back to normal as everyone says goodbye to their past selves. Luigi gives his past self one final Yoshi cookie, while the latter gives him one final concussion, right before they all head back to the time machine to go back to their proper time. And that concludes Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. And overall, even though I do have some gripes with it, I still find this as a really good Mario RPG game. While I do think some things were done a bit better than Superstar Saga, like the overall feeling a lot more fleshed out and open, But I do feel like there were some things that were done better in Partners in Time as well. Like, I feel like the humor in this game was a lot funnier than Superstar Saga. And I do feel like the battle system in this game feels a lot more refined, even though it's not entirely perfect. If you're very curious on this game, then I highly recommend trying it out, because even with its flaws, like the game being a bit too easy, I still think this is a very good RPG game. But as for my personal thoughts on it compared to other Mario RPG games, I do feel like this is one of the more weaker entries. Especially compared to the next entry in the series, which is highly considered one of the most acclaimed RPG games of all time. And it is the first Mario & Luigi game I've ever played. So I'm very excited to talk about this game very soon. But before we do so, I did a little poll a few days ago, and according to the votes, the next time we'll be here, we'll be heading back into the GameCube for Super Smash Bros. Melee. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!